Thank you all for coming here tonight. We're going to learn about the discharger-specific variance for selenium and sulfate that the wastewater department received in 2018, and it's up for review this year. And the reason this is important to you is we did this variance to save the ratepayers money because the treatment options that are available to treat these two constituents are very expensive. So tonight we're going to go ahead and walk through this presentation. We're going to start with selenium sulfate variance for the Pueblo Water Reclamation Facility, and we have an upcoming state and EPA review in October, so we're going to just kind of tell you all about this specific variance and what it is, the economic feasibility factors, how we were able to get it, and kind of how we've implemented it. So what is a variance? So we'll start with the Clean Water Act that the EPA has that requires states to adopt water quality standards to protect public health and the environment. Standards adopted for Colorado water bodies. So what this is showing you with the Arkansas River COARLA01A is our segment. So what that stands for is Colorado Arkansas Lower Arkansas 01A. And what are our designated uses? They're agriculture, aquatic life, recreation, and water supply. So each of these have different standards that go along with them. So a lot of them are numeric and have to do with physical, biological, inorganic, and metals, such as physical is the temperature of the water, how much dissolved oxygen is in it, and pH, so how acidic it is or how alkaline, to make sure that fish can live and other organisms. And then we want to know about whether or not biologically it can support life, or does it support too much life with E. coli or chlorophyll A, which is algae. And then for inorganic, ammonia, phosphorus, chloride, cyanide, sulfate, sulfide, and then some metals. Make sure that all of these are in balance to maintain the water quality for this segment. So what is a discharger-specific variance? Well, it's a path to improve the water quality over time, a change in the water quality standards that requires a rulemaking and EPA approval, which we went through in 2018 to make sure that we were doing everything that we could to protect the water. So it's a time-limited designated use criterion for a specific water body and a specific parameter. In our case, it's selenium and sulfate for both of those parameters. It's always focused on meeting the water quality standard by working towards the highest attainable condition, and then requires a pollutant minimization plan and includes a 5-year reevaluation, which is this year. So what is included in Pueblo's discharger-specific variance? Well, we did a narrative one adopted for selenium and sulfate. Both are naturally present in the groundwater that we have underlying parts of Pueblo, whereas the shale that we have has naturally occurring selenium and sulfate, so that when the groundwater interacts with that, it comes up into the pipes and then comes to the water treatment facility, or wastewater treatment facility, or water reclamation facility. It was adopted in Regulation 32 in 2018. It's approved based on economic and technical feasibility, which we had to show that it was both economically and treatment feasibility weren't quite there, and we agreed to address sulfate and selenium through source control measures and by doing $10 million in our pollutant minimization plan. So we're up for reevaluation this year, and then it expires in 2028. So what did we agree to do? So we agreed to line the sewer pipes and replace pipe and sewer lines that had infiltration in them. You can see that in the picture on the first top picture, and then we implementing a sump pump survey to make sure that people who have sump pumps are not discharging into the sanitary sewer, because that can reduce our capacity, but also the groundwater, if it's contaminated with sulfate and selenium, can give us more than we need. So we're trying to keep those out, and then investigating any additional treatment options that may become feasible in the future. So economic feasibility. What this is looking at is how much capacity does the city of Pueblo as a whole for ratepayers have to pay for treatment. So the way the EPA does this is to look at these worksheets. So are we strong? Yes. Do we have a certain debt to capita, median household income, property tax? So over to the right, or actually the left, no, where it says municipal preliminary screener, you'll see the different scenarios. So you'll see those numbers underneath. What those are percentages. So, 3.8% of your median household income is too much. Same with gypsum lining, because it's 2.3. So 1.4 is pretty much the magic number of a percentage of the median household income. This was done in 2018. So this year we've got to see, is this still correct? Oops. Go. So we did the economic worksheets. So we're still looking at whether or not what burden the city of Pueblo ratepayers can bear. And we're right around 1.6, which isn't any higher than we were before. So it's still not economically feasible to do some of the different options for treatment because they are expensive. So once you look at this, then we can also look at secondary factors that we added to our application in 2018 and kind of what we're going to be looking at in 2022, or actually 2023, sorry. 2022 is when we did this study. So is the MHI, is the median household income greater or lower? So actually we're in 2018 we were 45% below the state. Now we're 57. So it's actually worse in that case. And the poverty rate, well, the poverty rate went down, so it was 25%, but now it's 21.8%. And then how is the income distributed throughout? So we look at different census tracts to find that out, and it's still the unequal distribution. We still aren't growing really fast, so our population is still pretty stagnant, about 100,000 people. And then we also have high measures of community distress and the sewer system and water reclamation facility repair and replacement costs. Because although we'd like to do this treatment, even if we could, we still have other costs that have to be taken into account when we do these type of measures, such as we have 470 sewer lines, 63% are 50 years old or older. Then we also have a treatment plant that most of it was redone in 1989. So we're constantly trying to keep our replacement and making sure that we do our capital improvement projects as well. And then also electrical costs. So we want to make sure that we didn't cause substantial and widespread social and economic consequences to occur by making the rates higher than 1.8 of the median household income. This chart shows what it was from 2018 to 2036 with trying to make sure that we kept it at 1.3. You can see if we do different things, what the threshold is. We did the same evaluation for 2022 through 2041 with the different cases to show like how this would take more income, more percentage of the median household income. Technical feasibility. So Pueblo looked at 25 options, and water management, they were all infeasible due to things we could not control, like surface area that would need to be part of this treatment. And so we looked at, on the other side, we said, okay, what are some additional ones, physical, chemical, and biological? Some of those we can do, but a lot of them cost $150 to $200 million to implement. So the rates would skyrocket. People wouldn't be able to pay for it even if we could do it. So what did we come up with as our alternate effluent limit, and why did we do a narrative one? So we did a narrative limit because, as I've talked about earlier in this presentation, we couldn't figure out the variables. So we have precipitation, groundwater comes up, it comes to the plant, it goes in, and we can't treat it very well. We treat 50% of selenium, but we can only treat, we don't treat anything, all the sulfate at all. It just comes in and goes out. So we were trying all sorts of different ways to come up with a number, but the variables were such that we couldn't. So we ended up with a narrative, and what that is we're going to do source control, try to keep the selenium and sulfate out of our pipes by trying to make sure that the groundwater cannot come in. So we've located different areas within this particular part of the city, and we will be doing lining. We have done quite a bit of lining. We've do sampling in that area as well to understand the conditions that are going on. And then we have 2 lining projects, the F project and the I project, that also have monitoring wells, so we can predict what the sulfate and selenium concentrations are. So, and then treatment optimization, we've tried different, we're looking at whether or not we can add different chemicals within the plant itself to help us remove more than 50% of selenium. And a lot of times it's the iron salts. So we've been working through those as well and finding out how this works. When you put selenium and sulfate into the plant, where does it go? How does it transform throughout the process? And so we've done some jar testing, and we've also looked at different studies. So the PAC study, or polyaluminum chloride study, is trying to figure out if that particular salt causes selenium to come out of solution, and then it can go off on the solid side. And then we've looked at whether or not we can use ferric chloride, which is another type of metal salt that will also cause precipitation. What these have shown is we want to make sure that we're still meeting the other limits for metals, chloride. We still want to maintain the water quality standards that we talked about on the second slide, where we want to keep in mind that we don't want to add something to cause another problem. So we're looking at those, and then the adaptive management plan is just looking through like all of these different options that we just talked about, the fate and transport of selenium and sulfate. Can it be realized? How do we have different problems with different metal salts that can cause problems with different tests that we do? And then also some milestones. Our 2021, we did look at different fate and transport. And then also 26, we will be looking at different pilots, hoping we can come up with a treatment that's feasible. And then implementation is we got the narrative AEL, we got our adaptive management and pollutant minimization plan, which we are following closely. That plan has items that the city has to do from pretty much when this was adopted in 2019 through 2028, and then we'll have enforceable conditions. So where are we? What is the Water Quality Control Commission going to actually look at? Well, we submit reports, and we're telling them that we have done 127,036 square feet of lines, pipes that have been lined. We've done 334 manholes that have been sealed. We've also done 1,191 service taps that have been grouted. And then we've also spent other monies making sure that we understand selenium throughout the system, and have done a lot of just sampling, making sure that we do the sump pump investigation, pay people. And so already we committed to 10 million, but we've already spent 12,113,264.46. So in conclusion, the City of Pueblo would like to continue on our progress to keep selenium and sulfate outside of our system, and try to make sure that we keep our rates lower so that we can do the things that we need to for the city itself and our ratepayers.